there is an elephant in the room, and the elephant is here, in the power sector. We've seen brilliant presentation of things that have been done, but we do know that the major problem really is how to deal with the distribution sector, ECGs, inefficiencies, and debt accumulation. Because we don't deal with that, we'll keep promising and telling the public how much government is paying. But that is the money that could have gone into building the country in other social and economic lives of the country. So how do we address the problem of ECG head-on? We had a promise after the botched PDS attempt, and that promise was to immediately roll a competitive process that replaces the PDS structure. Nothing has happened since then, except yesterday we heard that ECG has been given, I think, $130 million to invest into their systems. How that money was gotten, because we can't find it in any document, we do not know. So what is really the plan to fix ECG so that we don't keep pumping public resources into ECG? I would also want to ask a question on the upstream sector. I think, Honorable Minister, you mentioned how inefficient contracts were handed to you, but we still see those contracts still existing, even though they have violated all the minimum work obligations that they had. So are you encouraging those inefficient contracts to continue to persist after 4 years? I think that is something that we'll be interested to hear from you. And also, I mean, after passing the E&P Act and also the regulations that were passed by you, we have only seen one successful contract awarded. Are you happy that it's only one contract that has been successfully awarded in upstream petroleum contracts? Apart from the Exxon contract, no contract has been awarded in your term. So what is really happening? You finished competitive tender last year. You should have finished the process by August. A year on, you are still negotiating. And the civil society group that actually monitored the process, one key issue that emerged when companies did not progress to actually tender was that some of the companies saw opportunity with direct negotiation and therefore thought they should rather engage to directly negotiate rather than go into the competitive process. So it was captured in the report that was a big disincentive beyond what government was saying, that the blocks were small and they didn't have enough data. Some also said that they had opportunity to directly negotiate with government. And recently we've seen that channel opened for direct negotiation. How does that impact on future competitiveness if they have opportunity to directly negotiate? And I'm also seeing that you want to give incentive to industry players to accelerate exploration. What kind of incentive are those, or what are you thinking about immediately? Are they incentives that will be rushed to Parliament and passed in 24 hours, or they are incentives that will be debated to ensure that the interest of the country is protected? Thank you.
Yesterday, I would have been standing here asking the ministers these questions. So today, Bashi is doing that to me. That is democracy, isn't it? But that is also our belief in the development of institutions. And so, but you continue to do the good work you are doing together with your colleagues, Noble and my friends around. So the issue of ECG performance, I think that we agree largely with you that ECG problems have to be addressed if we have to build a resilient, functioning power sector. Because that is the distribution end. All that we're doing from generation and transmission is to end in distribution. And the distribution end is also where the users of power, the consumers, are, who we are supposed to be serving, providing quality service. It is also at the level where our economy receives power, what I describe as the fuel for the engine of our economy. And so, yes, we want to address ECG. But the strategies differ. We inherited a strategy that had started, and we had to continue to implement that strategy in line with an agreement the government of Ghana, through its sovereign power, signed with the American government. And that had to do with the privatization, or what you call partial privatization of ECG. The program was not successful. We had difficulties continuing with it. And so that process had to be terminated. We have indicated to the people of Ghana that as a party that is committed to private sector participation, we are still committed to it. Except that we are looking at private sector participation more broadly than what was handed over to us. And therefore, when we are satisfied with the kind of private sector participation, we will inform the people of Ghana. I do agree with Bachi that there need to be deeper consultation, discussions about the kind of private sector participation we want. And this is why occasions like this are important. But until we get to the point of decision making, I will ask to reserve further comment. But I want to assure you that we will discuss with you, civil society, we will discuss with you, industry people, so that together as a country, we can agree to the kind of private sector participation that will inure to the benefits of the people of Ghana. But we are committed to continuing with private sector participation in ECG. In fact, there is private sector participation somehow in ECG already. What I think everybody is talking about is the management and ownership. The ownership and management of ECG as a company. But you have private sector in the ECG business, various aspects of ECG business. And this government hasn't stopped that. Just like TOR, we support ECG. But our policy towards ECG is to strengthen ECG, to enable ECG improve on its efficiency. There are many people who believe that Ghanaians can do that if government supports them. Ghanaian management can grow ECG and make it efficient if government supports them. Government agrees to that proposal as well. And this is why government is supporting ECG. We have cleared the debt. The debt issue was a challenge. We have cleared the debt and given them 4 billion Ghana cedis more to inject liquidity into ECG. Because at the end of it all, the main issue that was affecting ECG was the debt government owes it. And so as part of our effort to support ECG to make it stronger, financially sound, so that they have money to invest, in areas that will improve on their efficiency by reducing distribution losses, as well as reducing commercial losses. This is the way we think we should do to support ECG to be able to achieve that. And so there is injection of liquidity in ECG now. Secondly, Bachi just talked about the money that is being given to ECG to also invest. Apart from the running costs and cash flow, they have to invest. Government has supported ECG, for example, to undertake an audit of almost 8,000 transformers across the country. I want to be sure with my figure. Yes, 18,830 transformers have been audited by ECG. And the audit revealed that up to 2,598 of these transformers have been overloaded beyond the rated 70% capacity. And that is one of the problems ECG is not able to improve on their efficiency. Because that contributes to unplanned outages all the time because the transformers are overloaded. We have provided money for ECG to undertake 389 injection projects. That will reduce the overload, and that will also expand the space available to be able to serve the consuming public, and through that improve their efficiency. And we are getting the results. We are getting the results in the sense that there is what we call SAIDI, System Average Interruption Duration Index, which shows how many hours of interruption consumers suffer annually. Our interventions show that we have been able to reduce that significantly. By law, it's supposed to be 48 hours a year. But we have reduced it from 163 hours in 2015 to 36 hours, below the legal target of 48 hours as of today. The other one, which we call SAIFI, the frequency of interruption, because of this intervention, has also gone down. By law, it's supposed to be 6 times. We have reduced it from 73 times in 2015 to 14 times to date. So these interventions are bearing fruits. ECG's efficiency is improving. Financially, we are, injecting liquidity into ECG. And so when ECG is stronger and you now want private sector to come and take either a share or management contract, the asking price is huge, is higher, relatively higher, and the country benefits. The country's negotiation position is strengthened because you have a functioning, well-functioning company that is going into partnership with a private company. That is the philosophy that is guiding the interventions that we are making. The second question you asked is on the contracts awarded. Yes, we have awarded only the Exxon contract. And after the licensing round, yes, I have to say that the licensing round that we did, which other people call competitive bidding, they take different models. For some, you compete for everything, every item, that we call the biddable items. You compete for everything in the entire petroleum agreement. For others, you have biddable items and you have non-biddable items, which means that the non-biddable items have to be negotiated. And so what we did was a model that had the two. You had biddable items that companies will bid for, and on the basis of who gives you, the best, you select that company. But there are other items we call non-biddable items. In this license round we did. The negotiations of the non-biddable items is what has delayed in the award of those contracts. Because we haven't come to agreement. And because we haven't come to agreement, we will not say because it is licensing round, we'll go ahead and award it to the company that won. I'll give you an example. Why one of the companies, we haven't signed with them yet. They want to shift liability to GNPC for most of the facilities they will bring in. And we said no. The law doesn't allow that. We have to negotiate acceptable levels of liability that the country can take. And since then, they haven't come back to negotiation table. So it is not by our making. The fact is that we have a strong negotiation team, and the other side is not able to meet some of the positions we have taken in the negotiation. So as and when there is agreement, we will. The other government awarded how many? 13 petroleum agreements. If we were interested in just throwing petroleum agreements, we would have done that as well. But we want to ensure that we negotiate and negotiate well for our country, for the interest of our country. So that is one of the reasons we have not yet awarded the contracts we should have been awarded from the licensing round. Direct negotiations, yes. You cannot eliminate direct negotiation entirely because there are certain blocks that you need companies of a certain caliber to come in and explore for oil. Just as we have restricted tendering, that is akin to the direct negotiation. And that is allowed under certain circumstances. For example, if you're talking about deeper, offshore blocks, there are a few companies that have that capacity, like ExxonMobil, Shell, BP. If you put it out for competitive bidding, yes, they may win technically, but a company that is so small may win financially on the fiscal terms. What do? And so you have to carefully select companies that have the experience, that have delivered similar projects elsewhere. In fact, such companies, you even have to attract them because they have so many on their hands. But they also have the capacity to enable you get the oil that you need in deeper offshore. Incentives. Yes, I think that we promised that we're going to give fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. This is even the time for incentives to be provided because climate change is affecting the oil industry. COVID is affecting the oil industry. Prices are going down. Demand has gone down for oil. Certainly, demand may pick up as after COVID. But the stranded oil in the market, that has to be exhausted before new projects can take place. You cannot imagine how long it would take. And so a company to agree in the midst of all these challenges, to agree to come and invest in your country, you have to incentivize that company. That is the reason we're talking about incentives. And we provide incentives in other industries. Corporate tax incentives are given to manufacturing companies because you want to achieve a certain purpose. Same thing applies to the oil industry. And so we are not doing anything out of the ordinary. We are following industry best practices. And God willing, we should be able to represent you, the people of Ghana, well and effectively.
Mr. Minister, efficient ECG by a politician is grammar. Every government has said the same thing, and we know it's not going to happen. Mr. Minister, this is just a quick note for you on ECG. We should all just figure this thing. PDS had an MD who is the former MD of ECG. That former MD of ECG was running the same ECG team under PDS. Collection rates changed. And it was one of the things you were celebrating in the early days of PDS. Same people, same Ghanaian, but the moment we change the directing mind from a politician to a private sector person who has his skin in the game, who will make his money from it, everything changed. I cannot trust another politician to now inject that efficiency till you get back to that model in a way that is sustainable. And I commend government for taking that bold step with PDS. Even though there were challenges with it, I think it's going to be revisited. We'll recommend that you consider the Tier 2 and Tier 3 fund managers. There's a lot of money in there, over 27 or 30 billion Ghana cedis being held up there. Those guys taking over a facility like that would appoint the right management and build sustainability in there. And the value goes back to the same people of Ghana because the funds there, it's not that is controlled by a political mind, a partisan mind. It is fund managers who have to make commercial decisions on sustainability. I think that is one policy, proposition that we'll put before you for your consideration as far as efficiency in there is concerned. We'll call on the Association of Oil Marketing Companies. We are running short on time, so the question has to be quick.
The industry coordinator. I have a short story. It's a very short story. There was a young man who got married to a very beautiful lady. And the parents of the lady told the young man that as you marry my daughter, every single month you would have to make a deposit of 5,000 Ghana cedis every single month. In the event that you divorce her, she's going to take all that money. They've been married for 2 years now. The young man has been very diligent, hardworking, providing everything for the young lady, respecting the parents of the lady. Yet, the parents of the lady are still saying the young man needs to continue paying these monies forever and ever. Is this fair? Is this fair? Very good guy. He's not, that's not fair. Insurance. Anyway, that's the situation that the OMCs are in right now. There are many OMCs who are paying their taxes on time. They have no plans of defaulting. Every single month, every window, they pay their taxes on time. Yet, they are expected to be posting bonds every single time. And it's from that tiny margin that they make selling a liter of fuel. is there anything for OMCs paying their taxes regularly and on time to move them away from this bond thing, since they are paying their taxes regularly without any form of defaulting? My second and last one is that, without a story, is that OMCs are contributing over 500 million Ghana cedis in taxes monthly. And we are being given 21 plus 4 days to pay these taxes every window. It's inadequate. We would want some form of extension of the 21 plus 4 days, or gradually move to a pay-as-you-sell where there's some sort of mechanism to monitor exactly how much OMCs are selling as against how much they've actually lifted for the month, so that they can pay the taxes on those volumes that they have actually sold, just so that they do not have to go to the banks to take a loan and come and pay the taxes and then owe the banks, and that cycle goes on. Thank you.
Good evening, and good evening to the chairperson and then the Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy. From ASEP, you've discharged yourself very creditably as a Deputy Minister, and I commend you. One, we are interested in funding for the Petroleum Hub proposition. We hear is about 60 billion. 60 billion over 10 years, that's about 6 billion annually. Does the Ghanaian economy have that muscle to shoulder that sort of ambition? Secondly, we're hoping to hear a bit about renewable energy in your manifesto promise. The world is moving towards renewables. Elsewhere, they are doing almost 30%. We do not seem to have a sustainable program for Ghana, so we'll be happy to hear what you have for renewable energy also going forward. And then lastly, the period before elections largely are used by politicians to let the people feel welcome and comfortable. The period immediately after elections, that is when you squeeze all of us. I say this on the back of the fact that petroleum taxes continue to be a problem for most Ghanaians. This whole year, we haven't spoken about government revenue. We've given out a lot of freebies. Do we get it on promise that we would not be done with the December elections, wake up in January, and then the story comes back to us? I speak for the trotro driver out there, the taxi person out there, that government needs revenue, and the lowest hanging fruit happens to be petroleum taxes. Would we have that commitment from your team, your party, the Energy Ministry? Probably if the Finance Minister was also here, we'll be happy that we are not going to wake up to additional petroleum taxes the period after 2020 elections. Lastly, Tamoyo Refinery. We have it on record that the former Energy Minister, your former boss, the Honorable Boakye Jaakon, had recommended that it be turned to a petroleum, a tank farm of a sort. When you listen to your good self, there's also the proposal to revamp TOR. We do not know where TOR exactly sits within the petroleum hub arrangement. Is it going to be made commercially viable such that government takes its hands off and allow TOR to operate? Because workers currently are up in arms. They are not seeing any show. But on paper, it looks as though TOR is really working well. Can we have that commitment from you, specifically on TOR, what you are going to be doing to ensure that that refinery doesn't go down? We had a bit to also ask about Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company.
We respond to the questions. Egbert will take a question we didn't answer from Ben on the contracts, the non-performing contracts that are still not terminated, if you like. Then Hassan Tampule from MPA will take the questions on the OMC and then the taxes, the petroleum taxes. Then I will come back on the renewable energy and the petroleum hub.
Thank you very much. I think that my friend Sabwachi, by now it should be evident to you that any time that the MPP is in government, Ghana finds more oil. And so, yes, it is an indubitable fact. And I will ask that you go to the Petroleum Commission slides that you have, I think pages or slides 4, 5, and 6. But to go to a question, I don't think that we have any inefficient contracts or petroleum agreements. We inherited a number of petroleum agreements, and what we realized was that there was a lot of inertia. Companies were not ready to meet their obligations. We've done a number of reviews, about 3 of them. We've seen executives of these companies fly into Ghana to have meetings upon meetings where we take them through their obligations to Ghana. We were ready to make some major recommendations to the Energy Ministry, that's the Petroleum Commission, when COVID struck. But if you look at, so I think 2 slides before these. Yeah, so you can see, at this present state, these are the companies that are in the exploration phase in the upstream petroleum sector. So there is Media. With regards to Media, the operator, as you can see, has requested for a moratorium on the obligation to submit a 2020 work program and budget until COVID-19 subsides. We were ready to roll out a number of recommendations when COVID struck. So at present, what we are trying to do is that we need to de-risk our basins to make them more attractive for investors who have signed commitments with Ghana and the petroleum agreements to come and work. Everything froze from March till September. It only makes a fair case that time period for which no work was done, there should be restitution. That's restore the period to the people. That's the position the Commission has taken, and we have written to the ministry only a few days ago as the situation opens up for approval or authorization to restore times lost. And it is not going to be gratis. The restoration is not going to be gratis. It is going to be based on where you were as a company at all material times before COVID struck and the shutdowns or the lockdowns were announced. So I've given you one example. And then Amni, they planned a drilling campaign for Q2 2020, and then COVID struck. So it had to be frozen. And then Eco Atlantic, also their rendition drilling campaign finally planned for July 2020 with some service contracts already awarded. Contracts have been awarded, subcontracts have been awarded, and then suspension due to COVID. So the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Then when I stand here and say that any time that the MPP is in government, Ghana finds more oil. One of the first examples is the Springfield case. The final discovery was made. And so, at this point, the operator, that is Springfield, has requested for an extension to the timeline to submit an appraisal program. Again, COVID came into play. Before the shutdown or the lockdown was announced, Springfield was getting ready to move to the appraisal phase, and then whatever happened. And then again, another discovery, Nyankum discovery by AGM. Again, COVID is at play here, and so the operator has deferred plans to conduct further studies and appraisal well drilling to 2021. Then GOSCO. With regards to GOSCO, the operator has identified drilling budget targets and plans to drill its first obligatory well in the offshore southwestern contract area in Q3 2020. Again, COVID affected its plans, and so there's suspension. And then I believe that there's a last slide with regards to companies in the exploration phase. So ExxonMobil, that you mentioned, Exxon has acquired new 3D over the contract area through a multi-client seismic data acquisition by PGS. And then presently, ExxonMobil is undertaking G&G or geological studies, further geological studies to identify possible locations of oil and gas deposits within its contract area. And then the third discovery that I talked about is ENI, or ENI, some people want to call it, the Akuma discovery. With regards to that, ENI or ENI has submitted this appraisal program to the Petroleum Commission. We're working on it and are doing some back and forth with them to make sure that they are in compliance with our laws. So there are a few of them who, I would say, do not feature here from the 13 or so, because we have found certain inadequacies that I wouldn't want to put out here. But what we've done with them is that we've had meetings and have pushed them, actually put their feet to the fire, and all of them realized that, well, under an MPP administration, you cannot just take a block and go to bed on it. We'll put your feet to the fire and ensure that you meet your obligations to Ghana. So in the next few maybe weeks or maybe towards the end of the year, you may be hearing from the Ministry of Energy, depending on its position on the advisory that the Petroleum Commission will send to it, whether or not some of these, have to be given up by way of termination or otherwise. So I hope that meets you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Honorable Minister. I would respond to the OMC question. Basically, I think the two questions are on the same subject matter. Bond, and then 21 plus 4 days for payment of taxes. I think that the proposal that has been made is one that we find acceptable. But decision making, as they say, is a function of information. Now, you want to do something like this in terms of re-examining the bond system, especially when OMCs are up to date on their tax obligations. But the good number of them are not up to date. Many of them. And as we speak, GRA has cut off a number of OMCs from loading. Similarly, NPA has also cut off a number of OMCs for defaulting in the payment of margins. So if you are going to do a blanket, re-examination of the bond system, it's going to be very difficult. But I think that the proposal is a very good one. It's a noble one, because we have records of OMCs that do not default. In fact, not a day would pass and then they will pay all their taxes. So it's worth something that all of us should re-examine together with the Ghana Revenue Authority. And then also with the 21 plus 1 plus 4 days for paying taxes. That, I believe, also is one thing that can be done easily when we fully deploy what we call the automatic tank gauging system. Now, the ATGs, as we call them, is a mechanism for determining the volume of product that you have in your tanks. Whatever goes out, GRA, NPA, we all have visibility. And whatever you have in storage at any point in time. It's also a mechanism for dealing with the smuggling. And here I would respond to Duncan Amo, even though he didn't quite get the chance to say it. But it's something that, so when you have the automatic tank gauging system, it's also possible for you to know what products go into the tank. If they are illegal products and they go into the tank, we would find out. So the only way you can sell smuggled products is to go and hide somewhere and probably sell to bulk consumers. But if you are taking it to a retail outlet, 100% would catch you. And as they say, the petroleum police, we are always ready to deploy. And then I'm sure by the next quarter, by the first quarter 2020, we would have started deploying the automatic tank gauging system, as we have done with the ECTS, electronic cargo tracking system, where we are able to monitor the movement of petroleum products from the depot to the retail outlets. The last peg in the whole system is the automatic tank gauging system. When we do that, then we are able to deal holistically with the tax system, and we are able to deal with the smuggled products, and also to deal with quality. Because very often people get some substandard product and then they dump it in the tank, and that also leads to some amount of contamination. So in one fell swoop, you are answering 3 or 4 questions as far as we are concerned. So yes, these are good proposals, and I believe we'll consider them in our policy proposals to the Ministry of Energy. Thank you very much. I think that the issue about the taxes on petroleum products, you have to credit this government for being champions in this area. Now, 2009 to 2012, price of petroleum products, as far as petrol is concerned, moved 82.7%. 2009 to 2012. Petrol moved 82.7%,
and diesel moved 75%. 2013 to 2016, 91.9% petrol and 89.2% diesel, cumulatively over that period. Fast forward 2017 to date, petrol has only moved 18.7%, and diesel has moved 26.9%. Now you have to give it to this government. We always say that interrogate the data. And this is what the data says. And so, for instance, petroleum tax, special petroleum tax. In 2018, a proposal was made to government, and the finance minister announced to the Ghanaian people. Special petroleum tax moved from 17.5% all the way down to 13%. And that was supposed to be an ad valorem tax, meaning that it's percentage, right? So when the prices increase, this want to double it, and it will lead to higher prices. Now we moved it to 13%, and it was capped as a specific amount of 48 pesos, 46 and 48. Now, if it had remained the way it was, prices would have been about 14% higher than they are today. So, and then the excess tax was also completely abolished in the price build-up. Now, the cumulative effect of all of this is that price of petroleum product, as they should have been moving, is not the case as it is today. Now, tied to this is also the competent management of the city. And we always say that we are the competent ones, they are the incompetent ones. And it is true. It is not just saying for saying sake. Because when you manage the exchange rates competently, it has a reflection on the price that you pay at the pump. Because three things make up for the price of petroleum product: the price on the international markets, the taxes, levies, and margins, and the exchange rates. Now, if you find the prices where they are today, it is not, an accident. It is because those three indicators, especially the two, the taxes, levies, and margins, and the exchange rate, have been competently and managed. Thank you very much. I don't know whether Minister will speak to the petroleum hub and then the fuel smuggling.
So, Mr. Minister, there are a few questions coming up, so you speak to all that together. We'll take from the power. But I think, Mr. CEO, I think you should also have acknowledged the competitiveness of the petroleum service providers in making sure. I think the public should hear from your voice.
Yeah, I think that in addition to what I've said, I'm being forced to say this. In addition to what I've said, is the fact that when you have a very liberalized environment, deregulated environment, and players come in and they survive on the strength of their strategies, they tend to compete with each other. So instead of prices going up, you cannot, go up when your colleagues are going down. So the force of competition is also something, so that we find it very easy to grant licenses because we believe that it is going to promote competition, and competition will bring out the best of everybody, and prices ultimately keep going down. So you find a situation where the oil marketing companies themselves reduce the marketer's margin in their own price build-up, which should be going to them. So instead of going up, it comes down, and you move them as the window progresses. So sometimes it goes up, sometimes it comes down. So the OMCs themselves are part of and the BDCs as well. Where the BDC premium, instead of going up, has also been coming down because of competition. And we are champions of private sector, and so we live.
And boss storage services too.
Of course.
All right, let's give it up to our CEO, the indefatigable Hassan Tambuli. He saved this country 1 billion cedis in 2018, but that'll be celebrated another. I think he deserves another round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
That's from. So we're taking questions now from the Chamber of Independent Power Producers, represented by CEO, Mr. Eli Glimi Afatobo.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Please, I have some few questions. The first one specifically has to do with what plan government has to settle the IPPs in the coming days, because we are seriously saddled, staffed, and we are actually not in position to guarantee continuous supply of power in the coming days. Second, on the subject of the excess capacity, government has repeatedly mentioned spending about $500 million on excess capacity annually on what is called on excess capacity charges on the PPA signed by the previous government. I need a justification on how the $500 million annual cost of the excess capacity was actually determined, because I have seen different figure from ECG's books. That is about 200 and something million as the cost of the excess capacity that we are talking about. Does the country really have needless or unused or excess capacity? Is it that we do not have use for them? Because I've seen in your presentation your intention to explore the export market or develop more demand to put this excess capacity to use. I think that is the right thing to do, instead of complaining about this, or let me say downgrading the PPA sign in excess of what we really need. The next question. Our chamber, through expert study and analysis, observed that your government reduction of the end user tariff in 2018, the over 24% system losses in the books of ECG, and your paid revenue of PDS created the actual revenue gap in ECG's finances. And that is what all of us in the sector are struggling with. As when we give you another opportunity to do 4 more years, will you consider or allowing PURC to fix realistic tariffs? How do you intend closing the revenue gap and addressing the system losses? And also, how much debt, as at the time of terminating PDS contract, how much debt was accrued to ECG? And the last one, the independence of PURC has been a major concern to us in the sector. How will your next MPP government transform the regulator to position it as a true independent body? Thank you.
So the first issue raised here, I think by my friend Duncan, was on renewable energy. You did not hear much from us on renewable energy. I mean, indeed, as I indicated in my opening remarks, this is continuing. Government is continuing. We started implementing renewable energy projects and policy from our 2016 manifesto, and we will continue to consolidate the gains we made and to improve on what we have achieved. We have made some policy changes recently through amendments to the Renewable Energy Act. Number one, to vest responsibility for renewable energy development in the Bui Power Authority. Because you had several agencies doing renewables, but we needed a more coordinated approach to the growth of the renewable energy sector in view of the growing importance it is assuming in the energy space. And so an amendment has been made to the Act to vest responsibility for coordinating and growing the renewable energy sector in the Bui Power Authority. Then also, because we inherited so many power purchase agreements involving renewable energy projects, most of them at exorbitant prices, we have not been able to move with them. And so we have amended the Act also to allow for competitive procurement of renewable energy projects as opposed to the unsolicited projects, so that we can have value for money. And to this extent, a number of renewable energy projects, particularly solar, are being developed. For example, Bui Power is doing a 50 megawatt hybrid solar, and 10 megawatt has been completed. They are about commissioning 10 megawatt of that. You also know that His Excellency the President commissioned the LoRa solar project, and then also the Polygo integrated project has a 50 megawatt solar component in that. And so we are committed to developing the renewable energy space in order for us to complement what traditional sources or conventional sources of power is doing. You asked about the petroleum hub, the funding for it. Yes, a $60 billion project certainly is going to be so much for a government and for a country like ours. That's so much money. But the concept is a private-led concept. In other words, we want the private sector to take the center stage as far as the development of the hub is concerned. But that will mean providing some incentives to attract the private sector to make the kind of investments you need in the hub. And so government has decided to make the area a free zone area so that the taxes that go to free zone companies will apply to the hub area. So this is what we're trying to do in terms of the funding. Government certainly will provide funding for some amenities, the foundation projects, such as leveling the ground, acquiring the land and leveling the ground and clearing the land, extending electricity and utilities to the area are to be borne by the government. And they all contribute to the incentives that we are providing to attract the private sector to come and invest in the area. Of course, we have a component on local content. According to our downstream local content law, Ghanaians have to participate in any venture downstream. It's mostly a downstream activity because of the role the hub will be playing, refineries, processing facilities, depots, as in storage facilities, pipelines. And so we are encouraging Ghanaian companies, and government will facilitate the participation of Ghanaian companies in that venture so that we have ownership, even though private sector from Ghana and abroad are supposed to play the central role in financing the projects that will be undertaken within that area. So this is what I can say about the petroleum hub. The other questions are the plans to settle IPPs. I think that I mentioned earlier that we haven't paid entirely the IPP debt, but certainly government is paying some. And we have introduced recently, as of April 2020, the cash waterfall mechanism, which in our view is one of the answers to solving the payment problems IPP are faced with, not just IPPs, but other players in the chain, such as fuel suppliers and the banks that are lending to the IPPs. And so the cash waterfall mechanism is operating at the moment. It will also help us to eliminate further accumulation of debt, because at every time there will be cash flow between the partners, which will allow their operations to continue. The justification for how much we came by the 500 million, you have seen different figures. Sincerely, you cannot use the figures ECG has to what the government has. What ECG has relate to the portfolio PPAs, while government is looking at the excess capacity in general, whether on ECG or on government. You know that government went into direct arrangement with some IPPs, which are not on the books of ECG. And so that is what we are looking at. This figure is supposed to increase further as new plants are allowed to operate, like Amandi, Send Power, etc., etc. So they are all incorporated into the costing. Now you're talking about excess capacity. Why don't we export? That's a big issue. It's a very, very big issue because we would like to export. But where do you export to? Our neighboring countries where we export to do not have infrastructure. So how do you export to them? And so they don't have, even if you export to Burkina, they don't have infrastructure to distribute. And the demand is dependent on the infrastructure available in the country that will demand our excess power. And so that is one. Nigeria doesn't have infrastructure to distribute, even though Nigeria may need more power. Same as Togo. Same as Benin. We have been trying to expand the transmission network to be able to increase the amount we export to Burkina Faso, for example. We used to do under 50. Today we are doing more than 100. as a result of the expansion going on. But there is a project that will expand the transmission network further, which is ongoing, to allow us to export up to 200. But you can't do beyond 200 because they cannot even distribute. That is one challenge we are faced with. The second challenge we are faced with is pricing, competitive pricing. Because the NDC government signed these contracts, many contracts, at exorbitant prices. Very high tariffs, which the countries that we will export to are finding difficulty coping with. I'll give you some examples. The American contract, for instance, capacity charge of 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour, car power 6.43 per kilowatt hour, Amandi 5.46 per kilowatt hour. These are high prices compared with what the MPP negotiated. For Senate, 4 cents per kilowatt hour, 4.4 for Asogli. And so we are able to better negotiate, electricity cost for Ghanaians compared with our counterparts on the other side. And so when you negotiate, prices like this in power contracts, who is going to buy that? When Nigeria is selling to Togo at far lesser a price, and you are selling at the rates that we have in Ghana, there's nobody who is going to patronize our power. And this is why we are trying as much as possible to reduce the cost of power. And so I'll tell you, for example, that you cannot expect that tariffs remain the same when a major cost input, gas, the price of gas is going down. So government is not influencing the prices by just calling PURC, reduce the price. Government also has to ensure that as independent as PURC is, PURC must do the right thing. And so when you have negotiated gas price from $8.8 per million BTU to $6 per million BTU, and PURC will say because they are independent, tariffs must stay where they are. No. Government has to negotiate with PURC. We have to push them to factor the reduction in the cost of gas into the tariffs. And doing that doesn't mean we are undermining the independence of PURC. We are simply negotiating. PURC is supposed to be, working with government, with producers, and with consumers. That's the role PURC is to perform. And so when government, through its policy and interventions, demand that PURC look at its tariffs based on the interventions government has made, PURC has to look at that. It is not independent as an island unto itself. No, it's operating within rules, and it's operating within an environment, a political environment, that requires them to balance the interests of government, the producers, and the consumers. In most cases, you will see the interests of government and the consumers aligned, because industry needs cheaper power. And so when I reduce gas price, I expect that it will pass through the cost of power so that industry can benefit from that cheaper power. So I thank you very much for the opportunity.
So we're going to have a few questions coming from the crowd.
Anyway, I don't know whether mine is a question or a statement that if the minister wants to disagree, he can now go ahead and do that. On TOR, I think the issue with TOR is that my brother Duncan said, the staff are agitating as we speak. They are asking the board to resign. TOR has a unique problem, and I don't think it's a government influence problem. It is an issue of the shareholder having to make whether to inject money or sell. Now, if the shareholder does not want to inject money, you can bring all the crude oil you want, and TOR will not be profitable. TOR RFCC, anytime it refunds, make losses. The Woodfield arrangement only uses the first stage of the processing, only doing diesel and AF, and that's what they export. The RFCC, the whole of this year, anytime the RFCC have been used, they've made losses. So for me, I think for TOR, the shareholder, majority shareholder, which is government, has to make a decision whether to sell or basically inject the necessary billions of dollars needed to change that. The second statement, contribution I want to make is on PDS and ACG. I think it's not just about investment that government think that ECG needs. It's the attitude of the workers. The same as Senor said earlier, the same people when they worked for PDS had a different attitude. When they went back to ECG has a different attitude. And I think the government should consider the PSP arrangement because the attitude of the workers were much better under private sector participation than it is under government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kepoku.
Thank you very much. My name is Echo Moses with Bloomberg. I'm a media person. Honorable, on the fiscals regarding incentives for oil companies to operate even in these times, I spoke to some that have a view that those incentives must be in the fiscal nature, where they propose something like a sliding scale for some of the taxes and then the royalties and what have you. Is that within scope? And not too long ago, there was this Atuabo Freeport that was supposed to have taken place, where it's also going to have this concept that you're talking about, and then it will be servicing rigs and what have you, and giving Ghana's strategic position. It was really going to be really great for the region. How different is that from what you're saying, and why did the first one not come on? If only you can help us. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Senor. So this question goes to Honorable as well. So we discussed renewable energy. He mentioned some great initiatives that the government is doing. But one thing that we also discussed was the great instability, the need to change a number of transformers on the electricity grid. So the renewable energy that he discussed, the injection of solar, is a utility scale. Those are the ones that are being done from buoy to pump electricity directly into the grid. But what we can also do is to use distributed renewable energy, that is solar in our homes and the companies, to stabilize the grid. What solar will do is that it will reduce the draw of energy from the transformers, and therefore it will not overload the transformers, as he said earlier, that about 2,500 transformers are overloaded on the grid. So essentially, what is government doing, or what is the plan for the next phase of making sure that we can promote distributed solar, that is solar for homes, solar for companies, that would also help to stabilize the grid?
So the question here has to do with BOST again. The question, well, not well communicated, but I think I could probably paraphrase it. It said BOST is currently observed to be trading on the market, in effect also creating competition for existing players like the BDCs. How do you reconcile government's position to actually grow the private sector beyond our borders with pardon? I said BOST is currently trading. Like you see, anytime BOST historically has a trade loss thing. It just happens that today, BOST historically has a trade loss track record, and that is reflected in the audit report you showed, 624 million. I don't think under Edwin Provincial, the numbers I've seen, you're actually incurring losses. But the issue here clearly is the fact that you are creating competition for the BDCs. You also remember that BOST is an entity that is subvented by government through the BOST margin. You are funding BOST now up to the tune in excess of 240 million cedis a year, something you don't do for the BDCs. And you give them that much muscle, and they still are competing with the private sector. So the question is about the sustainability of this policy in line with the supposed representations you've made about growing the private sector possibly beyond the borders, when you yourself are competing with them with an unfair advantage on the market. We should also bear in mind that BOST operates as competitively as everybody. Your storage facilities, you charge us as everybody, and we do not benefit from that 240 million a year that the consumers give to toll. So that balance is what, and this is coming from the banking sector. And so, in effect, it poses a risk to funding the private sector. I think that's the concern they have in here. I have my last question, so you probably have the last minute to wrap up before 5:30. It has to do with the Pexos mooring proposal and the current CBM situation, where you inherited the ABB. And I think we said that last week. We had on Monday, so I wouldn't really want to rehash the history behind it. But Ghana currently stands facing a single point risk. The ABB accounts for 75% of the products that flow into our country. The only berthing facility we practically use for the Eastern Zone, over 75% of it. It's one. Efforts by the private sector initially to co-own it with government, were botched when government did not even engage the private sector at the time. And subsequently, efforts by the private sector to actually build an alternate one, a second one, in line with the MPA Act, was also sort of dashed, because government had engaged in an exclusivity arrangement and in fact created a monopoly which is at variance with the MPA Act and the principles of deregulation. How do we deal with this challenge that the industry faces on the security side, and how do we harmonize what has been done with what we believe should be the reasonable thing of engaging the private sector in the development of the second CBM, and at the same time also not jeopardizing the interests of foreign investors who, through no fault of theirs, were also taking a reasonable opportunity within the Ghanaian market? How do we balance this? What's the view on government on that? Thank you. And while you answer that, you also give us your last comments on your manifesto.
Thank you very much. With respect to the CBM, CBM is conventional buoy mooring, and then the SPM is single point mooring, together called all buoy berth. That's where we receive crude oil for the ABB, and then petrol and diesel. Now, private sector, especially Seaboard and some other players in the private sector, have requested a license. They applied for a license to operate additional CBM. Under the current regime, the facility came up under a BOT arrangement between the Ministry of Energy at the time in 2006 and Trafigura. Trafigura is supposed to build, operate, and transfer after 10 years. So in August 2016, they were supposed to revert it back to the government of Ghana. Now, in doing that, the government transferred the facility to Tema Oil Refinery to assist Tema Oil Refinery, clean up their books and then make some good returns on the facility. Tema Oil Refinery in 2016 invites a private operator, a South African company called MOX, to take up 65% shares in that facility. Now, in the downstream, by law, you can't do more than 50% as a foreign company. So that immediately triggers, some legal antenna. Now, in addition to that, in the concession agreement that was given to TOR, which was transferred to this SPV, special purpose vehicle, TOR has 35% shares, and then this South African company called MOX has 65% shares. It's an exclusivity clause which says that nobody can construct any such facility to receive petroleum products between, let's say, Aflao. It's a 70-kilometer radius. So let's say from Aflao to Cape Coast, more or less. So if you want to do a facility like that, you have to go beyond Cape Coast all the way to the western border. Now, this is tied in contract. Now, if you are going to license another facility, you will be infringing on the existing contracts. So then we have to get the opinion of the Attorney General so that we can move forward on that. Because the reason we are doing that is because there's something called legitimate expectation of foreign investors. They have followed what we call presumption of regularity. Now, if the government of Ghana gave the facility to Tema Oil Refinery and then had those terms inside them, and they in turn also bought into those shares, then they have a legitimate expectation that they will have the benefits of their investments. Now, that also infringes on our law. So we have to marry the two and see how we are able, because we do not want to incur any judgment debts against the government of Ghana. It may come at a cost. In addition, and Senor rightly made the point, is one facility that's of utmost importance to the Ghanaian people. 75% of our product passes through that. Now, in the event of a breakdown, God knows where we are going to have, product coming. We have to scramble and then get products through BRVs from our borders and even come and discharge at the ports if need arises. So, yes, so three things. the concession agreements, the infringement on the downstream minimum equity participation, and also the security as far as supplies is concerned. So, yes, the matter has gone to Cabinet, Minister. Correct me if I'm wrong. The matter has gone to Cabinet. We've gone to defend it at Cabinet. So, Attorney General is giving an opinion, and on the basis of that opinion, a decision will be taken to secure the best interests of the Ghanaian people. Thank you very much.
The question on trading, I don't think BOST actively trades. We cannot just store the products, so we need to refresh the products. And so we have to sell, buy, sell in keeping the stocks. So if you look at our market share in the trading in the market, we are number 4. So I don't think us being number 4 means we are stifling the private sector. So we don't actively trade. I would wish I can actively trade, but we are not. On the BOST margin and the inequities claimed by the BDCs, I'm fortunate to have been in the telecom sector as well. And it's the same model as how the rural telephony is funded. Because you and I know that the private sector will never put their investment in the rural areas or outside Accra. And so even in Accra, where I have the biggest storage facility, I am number 3. Outside Accra, where there's no infrastructure, government needs to provide you and I with petroleum security. National security. Who should pay for it? The taxpayer should pay for it. So I disagree with that argument that BOST is being given undue advantage. It's not true. You and I need to pay for the comfort. When my facility in Bolga breaks down, how do I pay for it? You need petroleum security. And it comes at a cost. And that is what the BOST margin is used for. Similarly to GIFEC. Rural telephony, no Vodafone, MTN, Tigo, they would not take their network to the... Pardon? They won't take their network to the non-profitable areas in Ghana. So there is a little tax that the government uses to ensure that our brothers and sisters out in the rural areas also get access to these facilities.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the issue on toll agitation relate to their bargaining agreement, and they are currently negotiating with management. Both management and the workers have agreed to cease open discussion on this, and so I'll crave your indulgence. I beg your indulgence not to comment on that. Then the fiscals, except corporate taxes, carried interest, and additional participating interest, our law does not prohibit sliding scale royalty. Royalty is negotiated, so we can negotiate it as fixed, we can negotiate it as sliding scale. Government hasn't taken a decision yet. We certainly are going to make consultations with industry to determine the kind of fiscal incentives we will provide. So far, the incentives provided have been non-fiscal, even though we promised to do both fiscal and non-fiscal. So we're going to look at that. Then the distributed solar, yes, we want to promote that. We're actually promoting it. And government agencies are also being asked to do the rooftop solar. Government is demonstrating that the Ministry of Energy, VRA, Jubilee House, we are doing the rooftops. And so we also will not discourage others who want to do that, to take the pressure off. But at the same time, we should understand that there are trade-offs. When you have so much rooftops and then ECG sales goes down, the revenue for ECG becomes problematic. And therefore, you have the largest distributor facing financial challenges. So there are trade-offs, and we have to be able to strike the balance. And then finally, BOST trading has been answered. So my fellow Ghanaians, in conclusion, my fellow Ghanaians, from the presentations we made and the answers we provided, I do not want to answer for you. But I believe that you are convinced if that and satisfied that we, the MPP, are better managers of the energy sector, through which we managed to end Dumsor. Dumsor will never come back. Under President Akufo-Addo, we will not have Dumsor. But do not forget so soon, fellow Ghanaians. I want to remind you about those days when our medical doctors performed surgery with torchlights because of several unplanned outages. How welders, cold stores, and hairdressing salons could barely operate and earn income to feed their families. And remember also the discomfort of having to sleep and work without your fan, sweating in your rooms and offices uncontrollably. We are further improving the energy sector, and we are promising you that we'll provide the necessary investment until we get an uninterruptible energy sector. We are keeping the lights on, and we promise you that we will continue to keep the lights on at affordable prices. We are also ensuring that constant supply of petroleum products goes to our markets, and we will never have the long queues that we experience under the NDC at fuel stations. We are further improving on the quality of the products that we supply to the market. And MPA has stood the test of time as far as its regulations to ensure this are concerned. But fellow Ghanaians, you should understand that there have been some difficulties. We will continue to have those difficulties. But we want you to bear with us, that together we'll generate the ideas that we will own as Ghanaians to be able to get above all the challenges our energy sector faces. We will listen to you. We do not have monopoly over all the ideas. We will listen to you. We will take your ideas on board. And eventually, we will build the energy economy we all need for our country. We need to build an energy economy for the rapid industrialization and transformation of our country. And so your vote for President Akufo-Addo and the MPP means a vote for the efficient management of the energy sector and the growth and development of our country. So I thank you all. May God bless you all. May God bless our country.